let's get started. We got through some very small technical difficulties, which are nothing compared to Richard's travels here yesterday, where he was in the snow. His flight was canceled from Chicago to central Wisconsin. We were pretty worried, and Richard just says, "Oh, don't worry, I'll drive up," and that's what he did yesterday. He's quite a trooper. So, thank you. I'll try to be brief, which is challenging for me, but I have a few logistics to go through before I do formally introduce him. First of all, I want to just say thank you for those of you who are here today, and also thank you who've been here the whole time. This is our 7th presentation we've had in the seminar series we've done this year. This series has been co-sponsored by the College of Natural Resources, the Wisconsin Center for Wildlife, and the Fish Co-op unit here at UW-Stevens Point. I'd like to give a special thank you to Haley Frater, who is just up here. Haley, where are you now? Haley, you deserve a round of applause. Great job coordinating a lot of different logistics, and I really appreciate it, and as do many others, so thank you. So the other logistical thing, after Richard's talk here, he has some books outside, and you can give a chance to meet him personally and do some book signing if you're interested in some of his books. And there'll be refreshments out there as well. So with that, I will keep Richard's introduction brief, but I will say that I met him, I went to one of his talks 6 years ago. I was super impressed with him as a birder, as a person, and as an educator. I was my first year of teaching in New York. I met him at a small school called Paul Smith's College. He gave a bird talk. Super impressed with what he did there. I had the chance to meet him last October again in Maryland at the Future of Waterfowl conference, and I kind of had just a spur of the moment idea, and I said, Richard, would you like to come to our campus and be part of our seminar series? And within a few hours or days, I guess what it was, he accepted our offer, and I'm really pleased he's here because he's not only an excellent bird guide and author of numerous bird books, but like I said, he's a great educator. He cares about the future of this country and our youth and getting people connected with the outdoors, and I really appreciate that, and I'm excited for him to present what he's been doing recently. So please help me in welcoming Richard Crossley.
Okay, thank you very much, Jake. Thanks for inviting me. It's a great honor to be here. It was great coming through God's country yesterday. I really appreciate my minder. It's not Haley, it's my minder. Okay, so she made everything great. Jake didn't tell you everything, actually. We're at Philly Airport and our flight was delayed. And if you'd been watching the news this morning, we were watching that through the windows, So that was a little scary. We didn't know what was going on, but I probably would have got off the plane if I'd known. And so when it said there was the plane wasn't working very well to fly up to here, I thought it wasn't that noble of me to want to drive up here. So. What Haley didn't know, actually, is driving's very bad for me, because when I drive like 3 or 4 hours, this is when I have all my midlife crises. And I have one about every 18 months, where I feel like I have to do something different, because time's going by. Now, a lot of you are probably too young. You don't know what a midlife crisis is, but it's coming. It's coming, so as the clock ticks. So, midlife crisis is when you're drinking too much vodka, and while the wife, this is not going forward, just so you know. So the slides are not going forward. Technical problems.
What if you do this?
If we do that, nothing happens.
Sorry.
So, yeah. Don't you love that? You see, this has been the trip so far, full of technical difference. So I think they're just trying to see if I can handle it. Stay cool in the crisis. There you go. So this is what I mean by the vodka, right? I'm having my vodka while the missus is running off with other birding guys, So that's what I mean by a midlife crisis. So I'd actually, my first midlife crisis was actually to get out of the real world and go into the birding world, okay, and do the first books. That was like about 14 years ago. And about 5 years ago, I decided I was going to do a waterfowl guide. And this what really excited me about the waterfowl guide. Hayley, can we turn all the lights off? Nobody really wants to look at me, love. So what we, the thing that excited me about the waterfowl guide, it was different to the other guides. Because it wasn't for birders, it was for everybody. It was for hunters, wood carvers, and birders. And I feel like we all have to be one. But I know birders, but I don't know hunters and the outdoors, fishermen and that group over here. I know them in Europe, which is very different to here. So I decided I needed to find out, more about this group of people. Now, I get hate mail, and I'm not kidding. I get hate mail because I haven't finished the Western Guide. The Western Guide is just an Eastern Guide for the West, so there's nothing different. And hopefully, you will be like me. I love the unknown. I love what I don't know. Discovery is what excites me. What I know is boring, right? And so the Waterfowl Guide was an unknown. And so to improve is to change, right? And to be perfect is to change often. And that's very much me. I always believe in change and that you're never good. In fact, one of my favorite lines, and it is my line, is I am young and I am stupid. And what I mean by that, I am excited by the unknown. I will always be young like you because I just love learning. There's so much there is to learn. And stupid means I will never know. The second you know, you stop learning. So always be stupid. In any case, you're probably asking, what the heck has Egypt got to do with it? Well, so my daughter comes into the room. We'd just been to Egypt, and she says, well, actually, a few days earlier, let me start by going a few days earlier. It was this midlife crisis. I was driving up the road, and I was a little frustrated with life, if we're honest. It's like, I need to get away, and I need to do this waterfowl guide. I need to meet DU. I need to meet Delta. I need to go up to the Arctic Circle. How am I going to... It's obvious, I'm going to drive there. So I decided to drive to Prudhoe Bay. And there's only one road that goes to the Arctic Circle in North America. So, going up through Alaska, it's too much hassle taking planes and things. We found that out yesterday. So I would drive across the country, go up to Prudhoe Bay and stop in at a few different people on the way. And so that's what I did. So when my daughter came in and said, Dad, how far is it from here to Cairo? I have no bloody idea. Look on Google Maps, So she looks at them. She says it's 5,700 miles. Sammy, have a look on. See how far it is from here to Prudhoe Bay. I'm going through Prince Rupert. She goes, Dad, it's 5,300 miles. Bloody hell, I'm driving to Egypt. So in any case, most important thing is to listen. And so I wanted to listen to all these other groups and hear their stories. Not the bird watching story, the hunting story. And try and see how we could put these groups together. And it was ironic because just not long before this, I'd been walking down the road, only half a mile from my house. I was taking a photo of a big dead tree. That's the sort of stupid stuff I do. For no good reason except to put them in books. And this guy comes out. He's a black guy. Well, he's not a black guy. He's actually a dark brown guy. Talking to me who's not a white guy. I'm a light brown guy. But, you're going to find out lots of things in life are stupid when you really think about it. In any case, this guy comes out and says, what you doing, right? So I says, I'm taking a photo of a tree. And obviously I'm thinking, that's not a very good answer, is it? What the hell are you taking a photo of a tree for? So he starts asking me questions. And he says, and I think he's going to tell me off for parking in his driveway, basically, But he says, oh, that's really interesting. Come on, I'd like to have a couple of words with you. So I have to be polite to go inside. And he says, yeah. He says, actually, I do some stuff as well. He said, a number of years ago, I was in San Francisco and I decided to be silent for 24 hours. So I didn't talk to anybody, and it was amazing. For the first time in my life, I started to hear people. And so it was a really eye-opener for me. So he said, I decided to do it for 2 weeks. And then I extended and it got longer and longer. And so then I started walking, so down to places like South America. And so I was silent for 17 years. Now you've got to understand, this is half a mile from my house in somebody's living room, and there's an obvious question. What the hell do you mean by silent? Is it what I think you mean? So I asked him, what do you mean by silent? It's like I didn't talk to anybody for 17 years. I just listened. I was a little gobsmacked. In any case, I did what you did. I went home, and sure enough, this guy was silent for 17 years. He now works for Nat Geo. He said, yeah, so I decided to go see Nat Geo. When I got to Nat Geo, they said, well, when did your flight get in? He says, well, actually, I walked here. He said, where'd you walk from? San Francisco. The head Nat Geo office is in Washington, D.C., just to get the picture. So in any case, I wanted to listen. So when I was at college, I hitchhiked to university 100,000 miles chasing rare birds. And I never told my parents all the places I slept. But believe me, they were not like this 5-star hotel. So this was my 5-star hotel for the next 6 weeks. And I loved it. Best night's sleeper I ever had. I was used to fancy places, the type that tell you where to go for a number 1 or a number 2. And so it was, we left Cape May, my beautiful, beloved Cape May, because I don't live in America, I live in Cape May. And so as we started to travel, in summer in New Jersey, we don't have many ducks, but one of my favorites is mallard. So, how do I do this book? So in winter, males are all nice and spanky, right? Females, sorry ladies, not so bright and spanky. And so we decided to do a winter scene and a summer scene. And as I was driving west, maybe some of you recognize this place. I was there yesterday, Chicago. So we do the females and also the eclipse males that looks like the females and the chicks, because, people like buying chicks, pretty little birds, And not only that, I'm self-publishing the book. Why? Because I want to be outspoken and say the things that most people don't want to say. Why? Because we have to change some things. And change is often unpopular. So by self-publishing, I didn't have to be a good boy for the publishers. And so my books are always about learning, always about understanding. Unless you understand, you don't really appreciate. That's what I believe. And so my background in England, in Europe, was about understanding what you were seeing. It wasn't about putting a name on something and ticking it and not learning anything about it. So in all my books, it's about understanding what colour is a mallard's head. Well, if it's backlit, it's green. If you look into the sun, it's purple or black. And if it's from 90 degrees, it's bluish. That's right, it's iridescence. A lot of people don't know that. But when I ask people what colour is a male mallard's head, it's always green. Looking into the sun, it's not. And so also, how birds fly, how they land, again, so you can really understand it in slow motion. And because it's self-published, I put some sex in, some porn in, because that sex sells, right? So the sex is in the book. Listen, we go into more details. Did you know it's 9 inches long and lasts for 3/4 of a second? I can see the ladies doing the maths on that one, but we can't. I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to say that, am I, Jake? Sorry about it. It's nature. It's nature. Okay, so as we move west, past things like common mergansers up in the mountains and red-breasted mergansers. And so, like here, the ones with the big white wing patches are actually males. They're not females. They're in their eclipse plumage, so looking female-like. And so for me, I always want to celebrate the beauty of the outdoors and behavior. And so a bird's size, its shape, its behavior, its colour patterns are all directly linked to how and where it lives. You see, white background side-on birds in all typical field guides are completely wrong. That's why most people struggle at identifying birds. It's not the complete picture. It's not what we see in real life. It's wrong. Peterson was a genius. His first book came out in 1926. He did it when he was 26. But it's nearly 100 years ago, and we're still doing the same thing. And if we look at how the brain works and how we learn, it's wrong. We know that, but we keep doing it. Time to move on, folks. And so saying this is not popular, right? You think publishing companies want to hear that when they're making a fortune? Absolutely not. And so we must change this, and as the future, you've got to be thinking about this. I actually tried to get MIT to actually research my book, compare it to others, and actually work out which works best. I actually know the answer to that because I've obviously looked at it a bit now, and books have been out for a while. But hopefully all nature books in the future will be painted with pixels, not painted with paint. And so most people are pretty lazy. We found that out this morning, folks, right? We don't want to go to work. We like leaders who go to the front and point things out. And so I always put mystery photos in books, just like at school. Because it's not until you try do you actually get better. And so the mystery photos, people like doing them. And believe me, if you can't work them out in the book, you're going to have a problem doing them in real life when the birds are moving. So practice makes perfect. But the more you practice, the more you actually start to see, the better you get, the more you understand, and the more you enjoy. And then just for me, always the celebration of the outdoors. You know, until you actually look closely, you don't really see. But why are the colours? As I mentioned this morning, it's all about the questions, not the answers. Why are the colours of head of a wood duck so incredible? Does anybody know the answer? Incredibly, often we don't know the answers. We can speculate. And that's one of the great things about today, about your generation. You are coming into the best generation ever because we know so little about wildlife. And with all the technology that there is, this will be the most exciting time ever for discovery. That's what I believe. And so for me, the books, I always want to try and get more people involved and a broader audience. So as we moved across the country, past Chicago, through Wisconsin, just down the road from here. Yes, I drove past here on the way to Winnipeg, looking at all the ducks. Wood ducks, downtown Chicago, lots of them. Why is that important? 82% of people live in cities and suburbs. For some reason, we think that people in cities don't have a connection with wildlife. They do, but it should be a lot more than what it is. So we have to point it out and celebrate it. We invariably expect people to come to us. No, we have to take wildlife to the people, like they do in other countries in the world. Okay, so in Britain, the RSPB has 1.2 million members. That's the equivalent of 5 million members over here. That's almost double the size of the NRA. They own 0.5% of England. Okay? Everything is so intensive. It's $100 a year for membership. Major League. They can have one-on-ones with the Prime Minister of Britain 5 or 6 times a year. Nobody can do that over here. Why? Because nobody's big enough. But we should be like that. And as big as the RSPB is, they're small. The National Trust has 5 million members, the equivalent of 30 million over here. Can you imagine having 30 million members over here? You would change everything, right? And so that has to be our dream, our goal. And so how do we bring this together? We can copy England, would make the most sense. But first I had to go to Canada, where things obviously are different. And so it's important to look at my past to understand where I come from. I grew up in England, obviously from my accent. I started collecting eggs as a 7-year-old. Why is that relevant? There is no hunting in Britain or Europe except in the Mediterranean. And so young people don't do what a lot of the people do here. And so if you want to be outdoors in nature and treat it as a sport, you go birding. And so a lot of young men, yes men, not women, go birding. It's hardcore. I know 13 guys personally who have died from birding. It's a whole different world. Okay, and so, but with me, I collected eggs from 7 to 10. A big no-no, right? Because you're killing the birds, much as in hunting over here. However, my dad, Richard, you take one egg because you don't want to destroy the clutch, and you get in and out so you don't disturb the bird. Very strong conservation message. Much the same as hunting over here. However, birders in Britain will shoot any hunters. So any name, you use the word hunting and it's a huge no-no. And so that is something we have to change. These dialogues and understanding of other cultures, of other cultures within our country is really important. See, bird watchers typically think of DU and the groups like that as hunting organisations, not conservation organisations. So how do we change it? And then the other thing is to look at birds differently. For any of you who are with me this morning, I look at things differently. It's about looking at things more closely. But it always starts in your backyard, the common birds. And so I really learned to look at birds in the backyard and take field notes. And of course, tomorrow is always about today. It's about the chicks. It's about the students at this place growing up. Because you, not me, you are the game changers. You are the people of tomorrow. And you are hardwired for conservation. All the game changers in the world are hardwired. And what I mean by that, they start into birds or hunting or something to do with the outdoors as kids. Actually, typically between the ages of 9 and 12. Okay, so it's really important that we get more young people into it. See, this is Britain in the 1970s. Okay, this is Britain in the 1990s. So ladies, if you're looking for a guy, if you look at that picture closely, that's the place to go. Okay, so this is just a bird, golden winged warbler, first for Britain. 12,000 people went to see it in the first weekend. Some things are small. Of course, I've forgotten why I put that in, but I guess I like sunset and sunrises. So in any case, I first came over here when I was 21, travelled the world a lot, very fortunate. And what most people don't know is that I am not a photographer. I am a birder. Okay, and so I got involved with the Shorebird Guide, part of that first midlife crisis. And so that was the first thing I actually put my thumbprint on. It was about, maybe 15 years ago now. And so until that point, I had refused to be interviewed, refused to speak publicly. I had literally hidden from birding. So nobody other than very hardcore birders knew who I was. But it was then that I decided I needed to speak out and make a change. And the reason I'm telling you this is, every one of you can do that. You know, I've been speaking publicly for quite a long time now, and to be honest, my voice gets louder. But I started from nothing not long ago, and you can do that as well. Where there's a will, there's a way. And so people have told me so many times, you can't do that, Richard. But what they mean is, they can't do that. You will find in your lives, a number of people will tell you can't do it. Remember that. What they mean is they can't do it. If you believe in something passionately enough and are prepared to work hard enough, you can do it. In any case, I did everything wrong with photography. I handheld, no fill flash. I'm getting older, so I get lazy now. I let the kids do it for me and figure it's a way to pick up attractive women. No, I'm just joking. But the kids are the future, and we have to look at photography as a way to bring more people into the outdoors. Okay? Because everybody has a camera today, and as technology improves, people will become more and more obsessed with their photos, with their videos. So it's a great way to improve the connection. And so for me, when I brought out the Crossley ID guide 6 years ago, I think it is now, it took me about 6 years to do. It cost me $250,000, which I fronted the money. I kept it quiet for the first 2 years because I would have been locked up, because in hindsight it was an insane project. I put 11,000 images in there. I took all but 80 of them myself. And so I have a very bad back. I used to be 6'2", I'm now 5'8". And so it's great. Everything is possible, right? And so thanks to new technology, digital photography and Photoshop, everything is possible today. But in any case, like I said, we've got to look at things differently. I'm not a white guy, okay? And we need to stop using arrows. Even my backside's not white. In any case, so I looked at things. So what is a field guide? Have you ever thought about this, guys? When you look at your Peterson or your Sibley or something, what is it trying to do? What are you getting from it? And so I actually asked the top authors, what does a field guide do? What's its purpose? And so for my purpose is not to give you a quick fix answer, to give you a name. It's pointless. I don't want to do it. I don't lead walks where I point out birds and give you a name, because you didn't learn anything. You just learned the name. You didn't learn a bird or anything about it. And so I wanted to create books that would show the complete picture, would help you understand what you were looking at. Not give you the answer, but help you to analyze what you saw in nature and actually give you confidence where you could work through the plates and become better. You know, and really this is based on how we learn at school these days, right? And so So we're still trying to work on that one. The audience is changing. They're getting used to it. You know, the first 6 months, everybody was absolutely confused when it came out. And to be honest, some people are. Some people fight it, but I believe passionately in it. I was hoping every book that came out from my book forward would be copying mine. Unfortunately, it will probably never be seen again. For the simple reason it's way too complicated, way too time consuming, and way too expensive. To pay to book is much, much, much easier than what I do, sadly. In any case, everything was different about the book. So how to use a book, you know, because it's different to other books. How to be a better birder. Remarkably, no book had actually told everybody how to be a better birder. That was astonishing when I read it. And I'm not a taxonomist. And since I've been talking, the taxonomy has changed. It will keep changing. It'll have changed again almost by the time I'm finished. You see, I'm into the habitat, the outdoors. That's why I love being out there. Okay, but birds look and behave because they are responding to where they live. So it seemed to make sense to put the book relative to the environment. So if it's a water bird, is it one that walks, swims, or flies at the water? Right? Makes sense. And so a number of the top authors in the world actually got together and agreed that this would be the way of the future. It made much more sense than taxonomy because it's about identification, field identification. And so no reviewer actually read that because all the reviews of the book were absolutely wrong. And it was very disappointing, really upset me. It took 6 months before the first proper review out of hundreds of reviews came out. Pretty amazing. And again, some of you folks are going to see this in the future. People are so used to the past. And if you've ever listened to Steve Jobs' videos, right? The great Steve Jobs, he would often say, you know, how are you going to do that? We're going to do it the way we've always done it. And so we tend to do that as a nation, the way we've always done it. So you should always ask, what is the right way to do it? What is the way to get better? That mentality is in Europe. It is not over here now. And so we need to change that. And so the Eastern Guide came out, was very successful, still is, still sell lots, hopefully lots more today. And then the Raptors Guide, which some of you have seen. So again, a celebration of the outdoors, lots of different behaviors, because I encourage voyeurism. Right? We all look at people, right? We look at their behaviors and we're interested in it, trying to work out what they do. And we need to be doing the same with wildlife. You know, so an osprey, how does it dive? You know, the soles of its feet are actually very rough, so the fish don't slip. They always put their fish head first for aerodynamics. When they come out of the water, they always give a shake, a little wiggle, right, to get all the water off. That's fascinating stuff. That's the stuff that excites and interests people. That's voyeurism. It's got a white supercilium. Who gives a damn, right? A lot of people hated me for showing one going to the toilet, but you know, we want to know, right? It's nature. And of course the celebration, just trying to capture what we see in the real world. But a lot of it is subliminal. So when you see a large flock of birds in the country, or raptors like that, all wheeling around, there's only one thing it can be. Broad-winged hawks. You might get other things in, but no other raptor goes in kettles like that. You see, behavior is easy. Everybody understands it, but books don't show it. So we needed to change that. And I always tell people, colour is the root of all evil, right? In so many ways. And so you have to look at patterns of colour. In fact, patterns of everything. So try and see birds in shades of grey, not colour. Because if you look at just colour, you're done. No chance. And so when it came to the Waterfowl Guide, the latest, greatest, you know, the Western Guide got put on the back burner. And so I tried to learn, make it the best it could be, learn from my mistakes the first time round. Everybody complained that they couldn't put it in the pocket, which was actually done by design. I didn't just miss that. Because in Britain, if you take a book into the field, you're done. It's over. You can't be part of the scene. No books in the field. Big no-no. You take field notes, you look at the bird, and it makes sense. So if I see any of you with books in the field tomorrow, even mine, you're in trouble. Luckily, I'm not going to be here tomorrow, so you're okay. In any case, so here's a little booklet, a fold-out pamphlet you can take in the field with you. In any case, so we're going north. I want to go and see DU Canada, right, and based in Winnipeg, the hunting organisation, right? And so I'd set up to spend the day to talk to the folks there. But I was struck driving in straight from the get-go. Well, this isn't a hunting organisation. It's all about birds, bird census, right? And, you know, ecotourism experience. So I was a little taken aback by that. And then on the next page, it's like, you know, the list of bird species they've seen and counts. So right from the get-go, I was sort of off my, thrown off the mark, so to speak. And then I want to know about the passion. The passion, I see DU emblems, tattoos everywhere. Crazy stuff. So there's something about DU that captures the imagination. And so I went there, walked around, fantastic. And so I left confused. You know, what are all these things? These are actually hybrids, but it was not what I expected. They were all conservationists doing great work. And I really left the office just thinking, oh my God, we all have to work together. Why aren't birders with this organization? Why do we see each other as different? That has to change. In other parts of the world it is. People work together. We can do a lot better, and we must. And so as I moved west, I would cross the Great Plains, all the Pothole region. It was fantastic watching all the behavior, trying to take background images that celebrated the beauty of North America. Arguably the most beautiful continent in the world. But again, it's the behavior of the birds fighting. Why are they fighting? Nature's an incredible thing, so just enjoying it. Always try and put wildlife in the background scenes, and again, the chicks. But also, if we're going to do a book that appeals to hunters, we want to try and make them broader as well. So if you're out there hunting next to a marsh, let's put all the other birds in there, right? So we all want to see more, not less. All need to grow. And so we put lots of other birds in there. Not just water birds, but things like red-winged blackbirds and raptors. And so, you know, people can get better. And so when I was at DU in Canada, in Oak Hammock, I was told I had to go see this guy in Edmonton. I'm not sure why I got a picture of Calgary in there, but it's in Alberta, right? So his name was Pat Keogh. So Crazy Pat Keogh, he was the guy. So some of you know him. But I spent a day and a half with this guy going around Edmonton. And so he took me around everywhere, probably a 50-mile radius. He knew every single farmer. And he would tell me about what he'd done on every farm to change it. It was inspirational. And he started to show me things I should have known about but didn't. You know, about winter wheat and spring beet. How DU gives lots of money to different universities to get better versions of winter wheat. Why? Because when they're planted in spring, they create more cover. So one of the problems is when there's no cover in spring, the coyotes, foxes just come along and take away all the eggs. So if we can create better cover, we're going to get better, higher success rates. And of course, I hadn't really thought about it. Most waterfowl nest where? They don't nest in the marshes. They nest in the surrounding grasslands and arable lands. And so I noticed this over the years. You know, wherever I went to a DU place, the grasslands were absolutely covered with birds. And actually in the marshes were always covered with phalaropes and everything. And so again, it was the same thing. DU, although they're a waterfowl organisation, you know, they were great for all birds. And it's quite interesting really, Delta, another group that does great work, their theory is to shoot all the predators, right? Get rid of the coyotes and foxes. So that's a little bit contentious. I'm going to let Jake address that one afterwards, so put him on the spot for that one. Okay, so, yep, so the wheat thing right there. So DU does great things. I think, you know, we won't get into this. That's too technical. That's for all the other professors, so we're going to keep that one away. So, but DU, America and Canada and Delta, all these organizations do great things. But, you know, in Europe, we do a lot better job of connecting people with nature. So in nature, everything is about an intimate relationship with nature, trying to get people close to nature. And so I was pleased. Not only did I have a bed, this doubled as my blind. And so I always kept my camera there next to my sleeping bag so you could take photographs in comfort, and so you wouldn't disturb the birds. You see, in England or Europe, actually in the rest of the world, like hunters do, we put blinds up, right? Why? Because over here, we do massive reserves to drive around in where you have to stay in your car while the wildlife's miles away and you have to be on your own because we don't want you talking to anybody. Or we might put a tower up 30 foot up in the air to scare everything away and get further away from everything. Insane. I'm sorry, but it's absolutely insane. Okay, so hides in Europe, your birds come really close. So what we know is today that people are not into seeing lots of birds. They want individual experiences where they see something special really close. And they also want to meet with other people. So if you look at the surveys, hunters do a good job of connecting, birders don't. But where do we create places where these groups of people come together? So hides do it. So you go into a hide, the birds come closer, it encourages you to stay longer, whether it's hot, whether it's cold. They do the habitat so the birds come close to the hide. You take photos, you look at them. It creates intimate experiences with the wildlife. Not only the wildlife, but you meet like-minded people, so you get talking. Fraternities, right? Fraternities are important. Blinds create fraternities. And so and also for education, you can put all sorts of information on the blinds. So it is your responsibility to start getting more organizations doing blinds. And, you know, back of our place, they're going to flood the freshwater marsh with salt water, but we won't go into that. But after fighting and fighting, they've now decided to put 9 blinds up. So if you kick up a fuss, great things can happen. Now, blinds have evolved, so now this is northern Norway. They make very futuristic blinds. Again, we're a long way behind. They're always going further and further forward. We can't live on the past. We have to now start thinking of the future and copy what other people do in other countries. Because they've learned the hard way, but they're actually moving a lot faster than us. And so it's really important we do that. And so, as Jake was mentioning, actually 10 days before the Future of Wetlands conference, they asked me to go and talk at the opening ceremony. Why? Because today there is a push to come together, and my book is one of the pushes. You know, we do have to work together and we have to be more futuristic. And the next morning after talking, I did listen to a couple of the lectures, and it was number after number after number. I'm not a huge fan of numbers, though the numbers don't lie, because we often get wrapped up in numbers without actually doing something. But there was one image here that struck me, and it's this one. 2.4 million hunters. So that numbers vary. Often it's 2.75. And yet nearly all the money for conservation comes from hunters. That has to change. Because there's supposed to be 86 million, I think it is, 86 million wildlife watchers. But there's a very obvious question, right? Where the hell are they? If you add up all the society memberships, it comes to 1 million or 2. It's wrong. So again, it shows that we don't connect. Think of those numbers I told you about in England. In Sweden, they had a wildlife program started 2 years ago. 11% of the population watched it. 11%. It's huge, like 30 odd million. So again, we have to learn from that. So as we kept going west, and I learned so much from Pat, going over the mountains, the beauty of the mountains. Again, the habitat, you know. Only a few birds are up in the highland mountain ponds, right? And so coming down the other side, I'd already been on the road for 3 weeks, loved living in the car, loved being back with nature, right? Because after all, that's what I am. I'm a hunter, right? I love being out in nature, male things, seeing the beauty of the harlequin ducks, fantastic things. Got on the Titanic, I've forgotten what the name of the boat is, it's from Prince Rupert. But I often thought about the Titanic, the beauty of going up the west coast through the islands. If you haven't done it, you've got to do it. And so we got to southeast Alaska, and you're entering a different time zone, and you most certainly are. I know a couple of you are going to Alaska next year. It's massive and it's incredible. And so the scale of everything is just unbelievable. But you have to look at things like this. It's pretty wild up there. So you see houses going down the rivers. But even the spelling, if you look at the spelling, thanks for help. I hope instead of thanks for help. Did you see that? And so funnily enough with waterfowl, they're the most studied group of birds in North America. And yet there is so much we don't know about them. And so red-breasted merganser. It was funny, I was talking to Pat. It makes no sense. Where do red-breasted mergansers nest? Because if you look in maps, it shows them everywhere. And I could never work it out because I never see them in summer. Okay, I never see them flying anywhere. Just driven 3,000 miles, 4,000 miles, not seeing one. It's like, it's funny, I don't know that. And so if you actually, the places we know where they nest are very few. Mostly on the coast, often in rabbit burrows and things. And so again, one of you can find out where all the red-breasted mergansers nest, because we don't know. Another thing that never made sense, red-breasted mergansers, the females are all brown, and they're always displaying with these things with black around the eye. You know, but 1 and 1 equals 2. Well, these are adult males, and these are all, according to all the guides, including mine, are young males, because they have black around the eye. So where are all the females? Because I can hardly find them, you know, it's 1 in 10. Well, guess what? It's because we're wrong. Those things with black around the eye are actually old adult females. So the older adult female red-breasted mergansers get more and more black around the eye, a male characteristic. And in Europe they got that wrong as well. But ironically, I've met a couple of waterfowl hunters who knew that. Again, but nobody in the whole birding world knew that. Again, it's just a good example how we don't get on, we don't communicate very well. But again, with the book, I was trying to create images to tell a story that we can relate to, celebrating the beauty of the outdoors. And being outdoors is a great time to spend with the family. You know, they always say the young people of today don't want to be outdoors. I don't believe that. We just need to get them out there, share it with them, and help them understand it. My daughter came up to Alaska, spent a week with me. She didn't look happy there, but honestly, she was. So we actually spent a month together in South Africa and Namibia last year, just watching animals. Not birds. I didn't have time for birds. It was just fantastic. But you're allowed out at 6 in the morning. You have to be back by 6 at night. We never spent 1 minute, inside in that time. And this was for a month, so she just loved it. So, we can get people back to nature. We just need to do it and present it in a slightly different way. And of course, being wild, if you actually look at this photo, I was actually tipping over. So if you look at the horizon, so I put it up straight. But no, it was great to be up there. Canada geese, very confusing. Again, another thing we're talking, we don't need to go into the details, but again, it was unknown. Some of the things we found out while doing the book says, look, what we've done with Canada geese is actually wrong. So again, for you young folks here who are going into the future, don't assume that people know or what you see is right, because invariably it's not. I always used to think that the experts were the experts. Thankfully, I know the experts now, and people are nowhere near as good as what you think. And again, there's so much to learn. And Stella's Ida, Jake, this is for you, mate. Okay, so Jake wants to see Stella's Ida. It's well worth it. And so the scale of everything was superb. And so we're up there for nearly 6 weeks. And it wasn't just waterfowl, it was everything. So baby boreal owls, an incredible place. And so I decided to go, where the heck are we? So I wanted to go up to Dead Horse. This is really the main purpose of going all the way up to northern Alaska, is to drive on the Dalton Highway. The Dalton Highway goes from Fairbanks to the Arctic Ocean. It's the only road that goes to the Arctic Ocean in North America. And so it's a little scary when you see 414 miles on a dirt track. And when you see signs like this, next services, 240 miles. But it was very interesting. It wasn't what I expected. And so the pipelines, right? Big negative. But in many ways, it was quite interesting how wildlife loves the infrastructure of the pipelines. That was a shocker to me. And so sometimes you have to be careful of trying to be ideological until you actually know the true facts about things. Sure, if a pipeline breaks, it's a massive disaster. But if it doesn't, it can actually be a big benefit. It seemed quite ironic going up to one of the biggest oil fields in the world and there's no gas, no fuel. In any case, here off we set, right? Car nice and clean, the vast, I'm not sure what it is ahead of me, but it's a little scary heading out there on your own 400 and some miles and the nearest service is 240 miles. Okay, so things soon change, right? So it's not a real clean road, but I think it was a good opportunity to learn to look. And so learn how to look at things and really watch things and appreciate things. Just the beauty of it all. The incredible colours. Just fascinating. It's beautiful up there. And funnily enough, there's quite a few signs up there, but there's quite a lot of irony in some of the signs. So the farthest north spruce tree, right? On the Alaska pipeline. But we need to tell people not to cut it, really? I had lots of friends with me, right? So that's why everything goes up there. So everything goes up there for July because that's when there's millions of mosquitoes. I was warned about the mosquitoes. Before I went, I had a full head of hair, but you can see what it's done now. And believe me, they are bad. So all the wildfowl go, so not all the birds, most of the animals, particularly the shorebirds, go up there for the mosquitoes. So when the chicks come out, there's just bountiful food. But they are a bloody nuisance. And so even willow ptarmigans, they're shaking their heads, they're driving the ptarmigans and other birds mad. Really interesting. But finally, I was very disappointed going on the trek. There wasn't as much wildlife as what I thought. But when I got to Dead Horse, which is right on the Arctic Ocean, maybe 80 miles, I'd been in the tundra for 80 miles or 100 miles or something, all of a sudden everything changed. There were loads of birds everywhere. Not only birds, but, there were bears and, muskox and everything. I hadn't seen any of this stuff, and suddenly a lot of them there. They have rangers there trying to shoo them off the place or watch them. So when there's grizzlies there, they have people watching them all the time because of what could happen. And it's quite interesting watching the behaviour of all these birds. So snow geese at this time of year, in fact all waterfowl, are essentially flightless. They can flap a bit and just about get off the air if they really need to help them get away. But by God, do they run. They all collect together and they run like hell. So as soon as they see you, they're off. And of course, Hedwig's there protecting them, of course, right? So, and even the signs, so they're very bird conscious, even on the signs, Snow goose, flight training area. Of course, there's Russian spies up there, of course. You can see the Russian spy just behind the sign on the right running off. You buggers missed that, what are you doing, So, but they've watched, it was really interesting up there. So they actively discourage people going up there. They don't want you up there. I met another English birder who lives in Lithuania there, and we would be stood at the side of the road with all, in town where all the vehicles are going past, and the security would come up and literally put cones around us. Like we're just looking at birds, we're not even close to the cars. They were absolutely paranoid about people. They don't want anybody there. They can't stop you going, but they don't want you there, which is really quite interesting because it's an incredible destination. And if you actually walk on the tundra, you're gone. No questions, you are gone. So the tundra is pristine. So a really fascinating place. And again, the unknown, they have these Canada geese up there, or are they cackling geese, or what the heck are they, the ones on the front right? So, we don't really know what they are. There's a few of us think we know what they are, but we think, we don't know. And of course, 99% certain means you don't know, right? And so it's really, really fascinating stuff. But the beauty of it all, we were just talking to somebody about the behaviour and the golden eyes displaying and the noises they make. You've got to go see them. You've got to go see long-tailed ducks displaying the noises. The waterfowl, the most incredible creatures out there. They hybridize. So there again, another story. Hybrids quite common. So creating the pages, long-tailed ducks or old squaws or whatever you call them. Just look at them. So for me, birding is not about identification. That's just an excuse. That's what I've come to understand. Identifying birds, ticking birds, finding rarities, taking photos, collecting eggs. It's all an excuse. It's an excuse to be out with nature, to hunt nature, if you like, with different tools. And so for me, I paint with pixels, as I've mentioned. I love nature. So look at long-tailed ducks. If you look at the image lower right, they belly flop. Look at the bird. Look how it lands on the water. Look at the water. Isn't it funny how the water comes up and round it? I love water, just all the different patterns it makes and the noise it makes as well. And then if you look on the lower left-hand side, look at the tail. You see how it's curved down on the one, and yet when it's going down, the tail pops up straight. All silly little things that actually fascinate me. Why is that? And so I encourage all of you to look at my books, to look at nature, and just ask why. Ask how. Does it make sense? Everything you see, ask a question about it, because that's the beauty of it. It's the discovery, it's the unknown that's fascinating. And the more the questions you ask, the more you will actually start to see it and appreciate it and want to protect it. And so just flock patterns is so crucial in bird identification. Long-tailed ducks, they fly in straight lines, rows of them. Well, how many other waterfowl do that? So right there, they're in a straight line. It's probably long-tailed ducks up here. And then you can confirm it with other things. Birding is not difficult if you become a voyeur, but you have to think about what you're seeing. And most of us don't do that. We did a little test for a lot of you this morning, and I asked a lot of the people to write down what they could see. And it was a struggle to get to 10 things. You should be able to get to 100 things, okay? And that's just practice. So I encourage you to practice. It's not about the answer, okay? It's about just learning to look, learning the personality of it. Don't worry about the name. Names are not important. A lot of you will recognize each other, but you don't know each other's names, right? And so do the same with wildfowl or waterfowl, with birds, whatever it is, okay? And it'll become much more enjoyable to you. Same thing, just love watching Stella's eider, spectacled eiders here, the chicks, just fascinating stuff. So spectacled eider, what a story, right? Do you know the story of the spectacled eider? We didn't know where they wintered until, forgotten what it was, not long ago, 95 I think it was. And so they found them eventually from a plane out in the Bering Sea, out in the ice. So many of them packed in that they keep the water leads open. They dive up to 200 feet. The water's 200 feet deep, so they dive so far. I mean, it's a damn miracle, right? Some of it is just spectacular. And the males, ladies, the males, aren't they beautiful? But guess what? They leave with the females for a month. And the rest of the time, it's the old boys club out at sea. I love spectacled eiders. Oops, I'm going to be in trouble there. I can't say that, right? But it's just fascinating, again, all this stuff. And so the first image was the beauty of them, right? So just look at those males on the left. And of course the females are subtly beautiful as well. How can you not enjoy those, right? But ask the question. So even there, what's the question? What's the question? Why do they have V's on their throat, the black V's? Why do most of them seem to have black around the eye? You could probably work that one out. Why do they have these big knobs on the bills? So, why, for all of it, why do they have pom-poms on their faces and on their napes? And so just ask the question. And then, funnily enough, if you ask enough questions, you'll find out that you won't be able to find the answer. So there you go. There's a new project for you. But if nothing else, how can you not think they're the most incredible things? But the sad part of this is these bad boys are in trouble. Of all the waterfowl in North America, the ones that we can't really control, okay, because they're up in the far north and You know, we have different other cultures up there, and so they're actually in severe decline. And with climate change, the far north is changing more than anywhere else. So we have to really, this is why I celebrate the beauty, because until we see them and recognize them, you know, if we see them and recognize them, we're more likely to want to protect them and put them in people's conscience, because by God, there's something else. And so look at these. Again, very interesting. We labelled these intersex, which is incorrect as well. It's the wrong term. These are actually mostly females, although they actually look like males, right, with the bright colours. So if you looked at that wood duck with a nice green head, that's a male. No, it's not. It's a female. So again, older females, the hormone levels change. They start to take on male colours. Actually, the male colours are actually the default colour. You know, but once the hormone levels changed and the duller colours are suppressed, they go back to being brighter. Not just in waterfowl, but in other birds as well. And so on the way back down, back south, I went down the Alaskan highway. Just incredible. You know, cool off a little bit. I'm English, so we only need a shower or a bath once a week or something, once a month. Just joking. But yeah, it was really a real eye-opening. And like most things, when you travel, you're often shocked by what you see. And so in the middle of nowhere, it sort of seemed strange to come across the signpost forest. And I looked around all the different signs, and it was really remarkable how many of them were relevant to today and what we could and should be doing. But really interesting. That's absolutely in the middle of nowhere. And so where are we today? Well, that's a great question, right? Are things gloomy or are things bright for the future? For me, I think things are actually very bright for the future if we change. The brightest thing is there are more young people, like most of you, getting into nature now. Contrary to in birding, certainly. Okay, we don't do a good job of actually doing that, but we can do quickly. This fall is going to have live wildlife TV in America. So we've been working with PBS and the BBC. There's going to be several days of live wildlife TV from 8 till 9 at night. I think it's going to be based up in New England. They've had live wildlife TV for probably 70 days a year in England for 13 years. I think it's 14 years now. Again, we need to catch up. The problem is we expect people to love the outdoors and come to us. In the rest of the world, it's piped into the living room. As we are with webcams and things today. And when webcams come into our rooms, it's remarkable how many people watch them. You know, so they're actually almost selling themselves. But if we did a better job of selling them and selling wildlife programs and making recognizable people who people relate to, young people like yourselves, make them TV stars, like in Europe, everything will change over here. Key to success is copying success. We don't have much success, but there's great successes in other countries, and all we have to do is copy them. I don't have an original bone in my body, but people often say I do. Absolute rubbish. I just copy other people who are much better and much smarter than me, right? And so we should all do that. There are very few original people in the world. Just copy it, tweak it, make it better, right? And so we can do that because America is spectacular, the outdoors. I always tell people, what's the difference between birding in America and birding in Britain? Well, in Britain there are no birds. You can't get remotely close to them. They're bloody grey. They're almost impossible to identify, and it's always raining there. Other than that, everything's the same. Not even that. We don't have a sports team named after a bird. Bloody Super Bowl champions, right? Eagles. Even the damn quarterback is, he's a hunter, right? And so all these names, and if you look at ads, they're everywhere. So there are no reasons. We do have a huge connection with nature, but we just don't bring it out at people. That's all we have to do. So I think it is not a gloomy day. I think it is a bright day. And so for me, this summed it up, this trash can, this rubbish dump, whatever it is, So look out of every window, like we did this morning, and see what you see. Learn to look at it. Look, I've forgotten what it says. Look for love. Look for good things. look for moose. So it's beautiful, right? And yet some dumb bastard put up dumpsters for the park use only right over the top. And that sums it up, right? So, and again, we all live together. When I say we, people, nature, we have to see each other. Organizations need to see each other. We all have to work much better together. And that's what I'm promoting. Really enjoy it, love it, but look at it differently and see how we can work together for the future. And so for me, who am I? I'm confused. I don't know. I've spent my whole life trying to work out who I am. You see, I started collecting eggs as a 7-year-old. So I was a hunter as a 7-year-old who clearly loved the outdoors already. I started hunting for birds at 10 with binoculars. At 13, I started hunting with a telescope. I hunted in England. And at 16, I started hunting in Europe. And at 18, I started hunting in Asia. And then in my 40s, I started hunting with a camera here. I'm not carrying my camera now. I'm not sure what I'm going to be hunting with next. But what I have come to realize, they are just excuses for me. They are just tools for me to be outdoors. Because I am an animal and I love it. I just love being out there at peace with God's country. And so we need to look at it, appreciate it, and we need to save it. Okay? But we need to change some things. And for the young folks in this room, you are the ones that can do it, must do it. And it means change. And that is the hardest thing of all. So thank you very much for listening tonight, this afternoon.
Great, excellent. Well, we have about 5 to 8 minutes for questions. Some people might have to shoot out of here, I understand, but we can do some quick questions, but then there is plenty of time outside in the atrium too to catch up with Richard out there.
So please, the social thing, the fraternity is important, so please don't leave. Everybody talk, make new friends. It's really important. Okay, it's so important that you meet with people who are like you, have common things in common. And believe me, outdoors is so broad. It's not, but it's just everything. So, but please get to know each other better outside. I know most people tend to rush off, and also, please do buy the books because it is self-published. And I will write anything you want in there. So come on, give me a question.
Why is the United States so far behind Europe and UK in terms of ecology and really connecting with nature? It's a huge country, and why is it so far behind?
Great question. The answer's not easy. First of all, there's so much pressure in Europe. It creates a sense of urgency. This is wide open, so we feel everything's good, right? No problems, there's massive forest, grasslands. To some degree it's true, but that's probably the first thing. And I will say this, America did the best thing, period, bar none, Roosevelt and Co., by saving all the lands. They've done it better, America's done it better than any other country in the world. Okay, so while my message may sound negative, and I appreciate the question because it's allowed me to say that, we have all these vast, fantastic spaces and lots of wildlife. But it's about tomorrow. We have to create more of a connection with the people because the conservation pressures will increase, okay, as the population grows and other reasons. So that's one thing. The other thing in Europe, America's still a very new country, and I really believe in this, so people look at things differently over here. And America has been the superpower and strove to move forward, but I do feel we've become complacent. In Europe, we're not complacent. The goals, if you look at values, they're different. Over here, powerful, successful. Over there, it's always about being the best. You never mention money. You never mention living in a big house. I live in a big house. My mum will not show my house to any of her friends because it's rude. And she won't even tell people I write books, I think. You know, you just don't boast. It's a whole different culture. And over there, you are defined by what you have accomplished by making things better, not by how successful you are financially or what position you attained. And there is much more of a social conscience over there. You know, and I think it's to do with the history. You know, we were the superpower once. We owned the world as well once. But, you know, I think you move on. And I always used to minimize that. I think, that's not for real. But I've looked at it more and more, and there is a difference. The whole goal is to be getting better all the time. It's a constant, and I go back once a year, and I go to the same reserves. And every year, it's noticeably better than the other. And there's new reserves. It's just very different attitude. And the research is so cutting edge and so much more of it. You know, you have to remember this. There are a lot of people in Europe. You know, really Europe is America. It's, you know, you can't compare America with England or Germany or France. You have to compare America with Europe, okay? Because that's the same sort of scale. And in most things now, it's changed in the 30 years I've been here. It's really changed. Everything is much more advanced in Europe now. And it's just this strive to constantly get better, looking for perfection that we don't have. We're complacent. But the rest of the world, as I mentioned, always looks at everybody else. They always learn from everybody else. So I've seen the dossier, pal Graham White, who does wetland ecology. Actually, he's doing a big reclamation of the Yellow Sea in China. He's global. He's brilliant. So I can tell you, nobody in this country has talked to him. That's absolute stupidity. And so he has a dossier like this of all the main places in the world. He can give you a dissertation of every wetland site in America better than any American. And for Asia and for everywhere else. And so nobody's talked to him. Nobody's asked him. Well, sorry, one person asked, because he was at my house, and I brought the chief of Fish and Wildlife, and I couldn't get rid of the chief of Fish and Wildlife till 2 o'clock in the morning. I had to kick him out, and you know, there were a lot of things. So over there, conservation is right wing. Over here, it's socialist. It's government. People don't like hearing that. The word socialist has a different meaning here than in other countries, but it's government. Right? It is. Over there it's not. It's NGOs. And so they have to make money. And so the whole goal is to create an incredibly special thing, you know, that people want to pay to go and see. Okay? So you have to go to it because it's that good. Like a concert or something. And so again, you create these hides, these blinds, where you make these intimate experiences. And everything is designed for the consumer, as well as the wildlife, because if there's no wildlife there, you know. But not only do you have to bring the wildlife there, then you have to create things where you can see it well, and where you can interact with people. And of course, we have to have a hot cup of tea, so there's always a cafe. But in the cafe, but it makes it a day-long excursion, because you go out in the morning, you go to the cafe, and then you go back out in the afternoon, and you meet people in the cafe. We don't do this, okay? And there's no reason not to do, and it's not for everywhere, but for a lot of places it is. Now, we do it in isolation. Some places in Florida do a remarkable job, and some in Texas, but as a broad generalization, we don't. We have to change that. That's it. God.
Our National Wildlife Refuge System is now starting to pick up on charging non-consumptive user fees to some visitors at some refuges.
Yep.
I'd like to see that in the state of Wisconsin on state properties. I think the political intellect in Madison is deadly opposed to that.
Well, I know. Yep. I know in New Jersey, you know, the Fish and Wildlife guy I know well, they tried to start doing the same thing in New Jersey and it got kicked out. I don't understand that. You know, everybody should be paying more, but we have to create a better experience for the consumer. Okay, you know, so it goes hand in hand. You can't just charge money, but you know, without giving something back as well. So
Let's give Richard another hand.
Thank you, everybody.